She thought supergluing a $600 fine to his garage at dawn would crush another blue-collar nobody. Instead, it triggered the most spectacular HOA implosion the Mojave Desert had ever tasted. The dry Nevada wind carried the faint scent of creosote and fresh injustice that morning in Canyon View Estates, that perfectly manicured gated hellhole tucked into the Red Rock foothills outside Las Vegas. Jax Harlan stood barefoot in his driveway, coffee going cold in his hand, staring at the violation notice welded to his garage door with industrial adhesive that peeled paint like cheap wallpaper. Unsightly automotive waste storage, it read in perfect cursive. $600. Immediate. Daily $75 penalties until removed. And there she was, Lydia Beaumont, Canyon View's self-crowned queen of community standards, jogging past in her $400 tennis whites, bleached blonde ponytail swinging like a victory flag, flashing that toothpaste commercial smile that never reached her eyes. Those weren't waste. Those 13 vintage drag racing slicks and radials had belonged to Jax's old man, who'd run Harlan's speed shop for 40 years before cancer took him. Firestone slicks from the 70s, Goodyear Eagles that once screamed down the strip at Pomona. Collectors offered him $17 grand last year. But Lydia saw only a threat to her perfect step-forward kingdom. "We maintain excellence here, Mr. Harlan," she'd purred at the last HOA meeting. Voice dripping honeyed venom. Not rusty relics from, well, working-class hobbies. Jax didn't yell. He just smiled that slow, cold smile he'd learned in 30 years fixing F/A, 18 engines on carrier decks, precision, patience, and the knowledge that every system has a breaking point. Lydia Beaumont had just declared war on the wrong retired sailor. 2 days later, the board meeting in Lydia's marble-floored McMansion felt like a firing squad wearing pearls. "Your appeal is denied," she announced without looking up from her leather agenda, perfume thick enough to choke. Sentimentality doesn't override Section 14.2. Her husband's landscaping company had beautified the neighborhood for 3 years with zero-bid contracts, while the Community Enhancement Fund somehow never bought a single new bench. Jax sat there in his faded navy cap, let her hammer the gavel, then quietly thanked her for clarifying the rules. He left smiling. She should have been terrified. Instead of burning the tires or paying up, Jax did what Navy mechanics do best. He studied the manual. Buried in the original 1987 covenant, before Lydia's crew rewrote everything, was a forgotten clause. Artistic and functional enhancements using recycled materials are encouraged to promote desert sustainability and neighborhood character. Encouraged. Not prohibited. Not fined. Encouraged. The next morning he was at the nursery before the roosters, loading up drought-proof marigolds, barrel cacti, and trailing lantana that could survive nuclear winter and still look gorgeous. By noon his driveway looked like a desert masterpiece. 13 black rubber rings transformed into exploding gardens, hand-painted wooden signs naming every plant, solar lights making them glow like alien art at night. Neighbors slowed their Teslas, kids pointed, even the grumpy mailman whistled. Lydia drove by 6 times that first day, white Mercedes crawling like a shark that smelled blood but couldn't bite. What she didn't know was that Jax had spent the previous week doing reconnaissance worthy of a carrier strike group. Photos, timestamps, addresses. Miguel's work truck fined $350 for commercial parking. Same model parked in Lydia's best friend's driveway? Invisible. Old Mrs. Chen's 3 wind chimes, $2.50 for visual clutter. But Lydia's husband's boat trailer and jet ski graveyard? Family heirlooms. The pattern was so blatant it was insulting. Then the money trail. $52,000 in beautification fees funneled straight into Beaumont Groundskeeping, Lydia's husband's company, for services that amounted to trimming 3 hedges and replacing the same mailbox 4 times. Jax printed everything, mailed it anonymously to every single one of the 912 homes in Canyon View. By breakfast the next day his phone wouldn't stop ringing. "She's been robbing us for years," whispered Dorothy, the 79-year-old widow who'd lost her garden gnomes to a citation. Miguel showed up with drip irrigation parts. 16-year-old Blake started a neighborhood group chat called Tire Garden Rebellion. Within a week, 4 more driveways bloomed with tire planters. Property values actually ticked up. People loved the color in the endless beige. Lydia lost her mind quietly at first, then publicly. New fines rained down. Unauthorized landscaping modifications, excessive floral disturbance, even potential wildlife attractant because bees apparently voted against her. But the real explosion came at 2:17 a.m. when motion lights flooded Jax's yard, and his new security cameras caught everything in crystal 4K. Lydia in full tennis whites, ripping marigolds out by the roots, slashing irrigation lines, hurling cacti like hand grenades while muttering, "You think you can make this look affordable?" The footage hit local news by noon. Channel 8 loved the headline, "HOA president caught destroying eco-garden she tried to ban." Lydia showed up at Jax's driveway during the live interview, screaming about certain people lowering standards. The reporter asked her to define certain people. Her mask shattered on live television. People who think rubber trash belongs next to million-dollar homes. That was the moment the neighborhood turned. That evening, 67% of homeowners, exactly the number required by the original covenant, signed a petition for a special election. The old 1987 document also capped fines at documented remediation costs only. Every penalty Lydia had issued for 6 years was suddenly illegal. $250,000 in fraudulent collections. Federal fair housing complaint already filed for selective enforcement based on income and last names. FBI Financial Crimes Unit smelled blood. The final reckoning happened in the community center, packed wall to wall, news vans outside, live stream trending. Lydia sat alone at the head table, makeup cracking, hair roots showing for the first time anyone could remember. Jax stepped to the podium with a single binder. "6 weeks ago she fined me for honoring my father," he said, voice calm as desert night. "Tonight I'm returning the favor, with receipts." Slide after slide, bank transfers, fake bids, discriminatory citations, the vandalism footage looping on the big screen. Gasps turned to angry murmurs, turned to open booing. When the county election official read the results, unanimous removal of the entire board, Lydia tried one last desperate scream about property values. Special Agent Ramirez didn't let her finish. "Lydia Beaumont, you're under arrest for wire fraud, tax evasion, and violation of federal housing laws." The cuffs clicked like the sweetest desert rain. As they walked her past Jax's glowing tire gardens, she finally met his eyes, pure, unfiltered terror. The woman who'd spent years crushing little people had just been buried by one. 6 months later, Canyon View wasn't the same sterile museum. Dorothy won president in a landslide on a platform of actual rules, real transparency, and gardens for everyone. Illegal fines refunded with interest. New covenant protecting creative landscaping. Tire garden fever spread to 30 neighborhoods across Nevada. Arizona State even runs a case study on it. Miguel's business tripled, helping folks fight their own HOAs. Blake got a full-ride scholarship for his desert ecology project. Jax's mom sits on the porch every evening surrounded by blooming marigolds, smiling like she remembers everything again. And every sunrise, Jax waters those 13 tire planters, living proof that sometimes the most beautiful revenge isn't loud. It's quiet, patient, and grows straight out of the trash they tried to bury you with. True or false? The HOA president was the real abuser of power, or was the broken system that let her rule until one stubborn man refused to kneel? Drop your answer in the comments, and tell me your worst HOA horror story. I read every single one.